And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we're pleased to welcome back to the program Danny Tarkanian. He is now running for CD3. Pleasure to have you back on the program, sir.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Let me ask you this. How tough was it for you to accept the president's invitation to step down from running for the U.S. Senate and to run for CD3 instead?
Yeah, it was extremely tough. I'm not sure how you compare that to, a serious thing like my father passing and things like that, but certainly on something that I had control over, it was one of the toughest decisions. I've never backed down from a challenge in my life. I've never let down people that had trusted me. At least I've never done so intentionally, and I did so, both of those in this instance, but I've also never had the President of the United States call me and ask me to do something and tweet out something also.
Now, at this point, are you endorsing Dean Heller?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm supporting Dean Heller over Jackie Rosen. Absolutely. I'm sure he won't have a problem in the primary, but haven't been asked for an endorsement, nor would I, say anything until after the primary is over. But certainly over Jackie Rosen.
And after going through such a tough primary season, and you've been campaigning so long and so hard against Dean Heller, how hard is it to reverse yourself on that?
It is very difficult. It's we had, I believe, was a message that not only was very accurate and true, but one I felt 100% good and honest about running against Senator Heller. It's a little bit different, the CD3 race. The other opponents in the race, there's 10 of them. I don't think are going to be nearly as difficult as, certainly not running against Senator Heller, or as difficult as it was running against the majority leader, Michael Roberson, in the last election. So it'll be more that we're going to be trying to build up our campaign, our base, and support throughout the CD3, and hopefully get into the general election with a full sprint, as opposed to the last election where it came in broke and battered from all of Roberson's negative ads.
Danny, you've got a really good track record in GOP primaries. If you would have stayed in that U.S. Senate race, do you think you could have defeated Senator Heller?
I felt I would have if the president hadn't gotten involved. But the reason, and I mentioned this to you on the show when I was on, I got into this race because Trump supporters in Nevada asked me to run this race because they wanted somebody representing the state of Nevada and Washington, D.C. that supported President Trump. And Dean Heller hadn't, and I did during the most difficult times for candidate Trump. That whole argument goes away when the president tells you he doesn't want you to run in the race.
Right.
He'd rather have you run in another one. He took away the whole reason for me being in the race, and that's why I got out of it. I'm going to tell you, there's people I met just 2-3 days before I got out of the race in Fernley, in Douglas County, some in Reno, that were thanking me for being in this race and giving them a chance to vote against Senator Heller, and I feel I let them down. But on the other hand, I don't believe I had any chance of winning with President Trump against me, and also going against all the other obstacles you have when you run against an incumbent.
But, Danny, you had maybe analytics or polling that showed you would have defeated Heller in the primary?
Well, we hadn't done any polling since the earlier in the race. There hadn't been any public polling released. Now, Dean Heller's staff says they had polling that showed them up and that they felt good about their position. But, for one, they didn't release it, and I don't know if it's true or not. But if it was, they spent, between Dean Heller and his super PACs, including DaVita, from December through March, when I got out of the race, they spent millions of dollars against me and for Heller. If he hadn't led by that time, he was never going to lead. But we felt we had the bare amount of money we needed to get our message out, but our message, we felt, would have resonated with the voters because it's what they really care and wanted from, my experience running in GOP primaries in Nevada. But that's over. My wife is the best at it. I was very, very down when this happened, and she keeps saying, just look forward and stay focused on moving forward and getting across the finish line. What we haven't talked about is, you say I've had a good track record in primaries. I lost the general election to Jackie Rosen by 1% in the last race, which
right.
was the closest anybody had in a contested general election last year for the Republicans. Also, it was the most expensive race. Furthermore, she spent millions of dollars lying about me, and I had a lawsuit against her, which I'm going to win, and shows that she defamed me. I can make up that 1% if we run a good race, and we feel very confident that we will. And that, to me, that's the most important thing right now, is to get over the hump and get a win.
Okay, As you know, CD3 has a lot of veterans, and I just wanted to ask you what you thought about President Trump firing the Veterans Administration secretary, then tapping his own White House doctor to replace him, and now he also has made overtures about privatizing the Veterans Administration. What are your opinions on these?
Well, with respect to his personnel decisions, I don't know enough about what was happening with the operation of the VA that President Trump had firsthand knowledge of. So, I'm not going to second guess him there. But I mean, everybody who lives in this country owes the most dearest debt of gratitude for the people that have protected us and given us the kind of lifestyle and liberties that we have here in the United States. And I think all of us would agree we need to take care of our veterans more than anybody else in our country, and especially people outside our country. And we just aren't doing that. We have people, and you see it reported all the time, waiting in long lines to get in and not getting the treatment they need. But on the other hand, when I've campaigned throughout the state, the vast majority of veterans tell me they don't want to get rid of the VA because when they do get in there, even though there's large delays, they get great treatment and they're very happy with it. Mm-hmm. So from what I hear is they want the option that, hey, if we can't get in soon enough and we want to go to another hospital, we should have that right to do so. But if we can and we can get into the VA and get the kind of treatment that they really like, we should let them. Hey, we should do whatever the veterans want and feel what's best for them. They deserve it.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Danny Tarkanian. He is now running for CD3. President Trump asked him to step away from the race for U.S. Senate with Dean Heller. You have got to have a whole different strategy now. Obviously, you would have had to have a whole different strategy if you did end up winning the Senate primary. But now the CD3 race, what is your strategy against Susie Lee? Susie Lee ran and got a lot of name recognition the last time around. Didn't win, but at the same time, she has a lot of money behind her. What's your strategy?
Yeah, first of all, she does have a lot of money behind her. That's what differentiates her from Jackie Rosen. Susie's raising money like no one has in a congressional seat. She's got $600,000 cash on hand, raised over $700 after her first 2 quarters, and I hear she's going to have another great reporting period. But it isn't just what you raise individually. When you get into one of these contested races, the outside money comes in, the super PACs. As I mentioned in my last race against Jackie Rosen, it was the most expensive race in the country last year, and there was $6.5 million from super PACs on both sides that came in. So it isn't going to be a money issue. I think to me, it's a simple process. Susie Lee is going to argue for the progressive movement that Bernie Sanders and others have articulated, and there is a movement by a segment of our party country that wants that. My whole argument is going to be from day one, and I've said this. I'm not going to get out there and say, hey, you got to love Donald Trump, you got to like what he says, and so forth. But what I've said all along, and what I believe very firmly in, the policies that he's articulating in the America First agenda, taking care of Americans first, taking care of veterans, taking care of our military, taking care of our police officers. These are things that I think are great policies. After just a year and a couple of months, you're seeing the effects of these policies, the lowest unemployment rate in almost 2 decades, highest consumer confidence in 2 decades. We can go on. But I'm going to run on the effects of the America First policies that President Trump has articulated. And I believe when people go to the polls and vote in November, they may say, I don't like some of the things that President Trump says or some of the things, some of the actions that he does, but they're going to say, gosh, I'm so happy with the way our economy is going right now, the way our national security is going right now. I don't want to change it. I want to keep people in office that support those policy positions.
Where do you think the big battleground is going to be in Nevada? Is it going to be in rural Nevada, as it was for Adam Laxalt? Is it going to be in Clark County, Washoe? How do you see it from a strategy point of view?
Well, you're talking in a statewide race, not my CD3 race, but in a statewide race, the rurals are going to come out. They're going to vote very strongly for the GOP nominee, Laxalt, and I would presume Heller also. I think Washoe County is going to make a big difference. Clark County is going to vote Democrat. It's going to vote Democrat by a significant amount. The key for the Republican Party is to keep the voter registration numbers at a low enough level that we can make up the difference. Right now, I think it's about 60,000. The last election was 92,000. And when you look at Trump, I believe lost by a little over 20,000. So did Heck. But the difference in the voter registration change that we've seen since the last election to this one. Now, the caveat is the Democrats always turn up the voter registration numbers the last 4 or 5 months of the campaign, so you're going to see those numbers increasing some. It's on the Republican side to keep those numbers low, and then to target the independents. And again, talking about the America First policies that really cater towards or address the concerns of middle-class, hard-working Americans have, and hopefully get enough of those independents to vote for you.
Yeah, and my apologies. I was thinking U.S. Senate race in there instead of CD3, which is entirely down in southern Nevada, right?
Oh, it's okay. I can talk about the Senate one. The state one.
Well, Danny, I want to get back to this veteran stuff. You said that, Trump wants to take care of veterans, but some veterans that, that I've spoke to up here, they're really concerned about this privatization of the Veterans Administration. Could you address that? How are you going to answer that if someone asks you on the campaign trail?
Yeah, and when I said President Trump wants to take care of the veterans, I'm talking about the America First policies that he articulated during the campaign.
Right.
He had talked about during the campaign of giving veterans the choice, giving them a card to go to regular hospitals if they wanted to, but still go to the VA if that's what they chose. And that's the position I'm going to take and fight for. It's the one that I hear from all the veterans, not all of them, but the vast majority of them that I hear in the state. If what you're saying is President Trump is now arguing to eliminate the VA and completely privatize it, then that's not something that I'm going to vote for, because that's not what I'm hearing from the vast majority of veterans. They want to have that option to go to the VA system, but they also want the option to go to a private hospital if they can't, if the VA is not serving their needs.
Danny, we were talking about Susie Lee and her money advantage at this point. And her husband, Dan Lee, is a very prominent gaming executive. Are you going to get support, or are you getting support from Sheldon Adelson?
I haven't yet, but I assume that I will. He's going to support the Republican nominee in this race, and he supported me. He's never supported me in a primary, and he supported a couple of my opponents, but they've supported me in a general election, and I would assume I would get the support of some of the other casino owners too, like the Fertittas. Michael Gahn is going to contribute to my campaign. He's been a long-time family friend. So we'll get some. Look at Susie Lee's FEC report shows that she's getting a ton of money from the MGM. Virtually all of their executives are given to them along with their super PAC. Same with Caesars World. She used to work with Jan Lavery Jones, and she's got a ton of money from them. Some from Boyd Gaming. She is definitely going to be the big casino owners' choice. But there's a couple of them that still support Republicans, and we'll want to have somebody in there supporting the America First policies.
And that's where we have to leave it. A long road ahead, so we'll be back to talk to you. Thank you, Danny Tarkanian.